She didn't break into the house. She was raised in it. They called her family. One night she killed 3 of them and nearly finished the rest. Not out of hatred, just to feel what it's like to kill. In the quiet suburb of Pico Rivera, California, the Flores family lived what appeared to be a model life. Richard and Sylvia Flores raised 4 biological children and opened their home to 2 nieces, Monica Diaz and Laura Rita, after the girl's mother passed away. Monica and Laura, half-sisters, were taken in at a young age and treated as equals, given the same love, resources, and education as the rest of the children. The home, a 4-bedroom house tucked in a peaceful neighborhood, had always been filled with noise, activity, and affection. There had never been reports of conflict, neglect, or violence. Esperanza Flores, the oldest daughter, returned home that summer of 2000 for break, expecting little more than a few quiet weeks with her family. On the night of July 20th, the house went to sleep like any other night. Hours later, before dawn broke, a sudden loud crash echoed through the hallway. A blunt sound, heavy and sharp, as though something or someone had collided violently with a wall. The sound was not one of daily life, but of rupture. As police would later piece together, what followed in the next few minutes was a calculated and silent massacre. The killer had entered without force. There were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. Instead, what unfolded was a methodical assault that left 3 children dead, 1 adult severely injured, and a house transformed into a crime scene soaked in blood. Inside the home, the scenes were devastating. Sylvia Jr., only 13 years old, had been stabbed to death in her bedroom. Her body was found on the floor beside her bed, suggesting she had awoken during the attack and attempted to flee or fight back. Blood patterns on the mattress and the hardwood indicated movement. Possibly a struggle, possibly the final seconds of resistance. In the next room, Richard Jr., 17, and Matthew, just 10, were found stabbed multiple times, each in their beds. Neither boy showed signs of waking up before the attack. The knife wounds were clean, deep, and concentrated in the upper torso, a sign of control, not frenzy. Matthew's body bore drag marks along the carpet, as if he had been moved after death or had fallen out of bed while wounded. Richard Flores, 42, had multiple defensive wounds across his forearms and hands. The injuries painted a clear picture of a man awakened by the sounds of his wife being attacked, rising from sleep to face an armed assailant. The bedroom wall behind the bed bore a large bloody smear where Richard's body had slammed into it during the struggle. Sylvia Flores survived 15 stab wounds, thanks to a narrow miss of major arteries. She had been the first to be attacked. The clinical precision of the stab locations pointed to an attacker who had studied anatomy, or at least understood where to strike for maximum effect. The house did not show signs of robbery. Valuables remained untouched. The back door was unlocked, and near it, police discovered a backpack hidden beside a towel. This was not an impulsive act. It was a planned, premeditated act of family annihilation. Police noted the eerie silence of the crime scene. None of the neighbors heard screaming. The scene inside the house was too methodical, too quiet. It bore the hallmark of someone who knew the layout, who had moved through the home with intent, without hesitation, and without fear of being caught. In Monica Diaz's room, investigators found 2 knives laid neatly on her vanity. Her story, that she had been in the bathroom and heard only footsteps and doors, did not align with the physical evidence. Forensic investigators traced blood patterns across the floorboards, along the walls, and on the staircase. The blood had traveled with direction, leading away from certain rooms, pooling in others. A flashlight covered in blood was found in the hallway. The batteries inside held a single fingerprint, one that did not belong to anyone in the family. From the first day, the crime scene suggested more than a break-in gone wrong. The physical evidence spoke of knowledge, of familiarity, and of betrayal. What elevated this crime beyond horror was not only the brutality of the killings, but the disturbing calm in its execution. The victims were not chosen randomly, nor was the attack chaotic. It was systematic, calculated. There was no sign of forced entry because the killer or killers had been let in. They belonged inside. And standing among the blood, unscathed, was Monica Diaz, the girl the family had raised, protected, and called their own. Michael Naranjo, 17, had been a familiar face at the Flores household. He was Monica's boyfriend, met through their high school's junior ROTC program, and he often joined the family for dinners, birthday parties, and outings. To the outside world, he was quiet, perhaps withdrawn, but far from dangerous. He was welcomed, trusted, and integrated into the family's routines. That trust, it would turn out, was a fatal mistake. In the aftermath of the murders, the second search of the Flores home unearthed a small wooden box tucked inside Monica's bedroom closet. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters exchanged between her and Michael. These were not expressions of teenage love. They were blueprints for mass murder. Each letter discussed strategies, timing, entry points, targets, and what to do if someone woke up. One letter included sketches of the house layout with marked routes and a checklist of objectives. What stood out to investigators was not just the planning, but the tone. The letter spoke of anticipation, excitement, and even satisfaction. Monica offered suggestions on improving the plan, identifying which siblings would be easiest to eliminate first. The two teenagers had written with the clinical detachment of soldiers preparing for a mission, not children contemplating the murder of their family. At Michael's house, detectives found something even darker. Hidden beneath his bed was a collection of combat manuals, guides on hand-to-hand killing, books about serial killers, and a notebook documenting their plan in greater detail. One page listed each member of the Flores family by name, with psychological notes next to each. Who was most trusting? Who might resist? Who should be killed first? Beneath the macabre collection lay an assortment of knives. They varied in size and design. The handles had been modified with cloth and tape for better grip. One towel in the room, nearly identical to the one found at the Flores crime scene, had dried bloodstains along the edge. Forensic testing linked Michael directly to the scene. His fingerprints were found on the bloodied flashlight. Every piece of tape used to wrap the weapons bore traces of DNA from both him and Monica. It was evident they had prepared together, handled the weapons in advance, and executed the plan Zafo, the plan, side by side. The pathology of the crime pointed to what in criminal psychology is known as shared psychosis, or folie à deux, a rare phenomenon where two individuals, often emotionally dependent, share the same delusion or violent obsession. Monica and Michael appeared to feed off each other's fantasies, reinforcing their ideas until murder no longer seemed unthinkable. It became necessary. Criminologically, Monica displayed traits not typical of a manipulated accomplice. Her letters did not reflect reluctance, fear, or resistance. Instead, she responded to Michael with enthusiasm. She refined the plan. She adapted strategy. The depth of her involvement stripped away any narrative of naivete or coercion. Monica had also been the one to disable the house's phone lines. She had set her alarm for 2 a.m., unlocked the back door, and waited for Michael. This was not a passive participant. She was the gatekeeper. What disturbed investigators most was the absence of emotional response. Monica did not break down. She showed no visible remorse. During interrogation, when asked why she did it, she simply stated that she had no real reason, that she didn't hate her family, but that she wanted to know what it felt like to kill. This absence of motive, this emotional void, is characteristic of emerging antisocial personality traits. In youth, it manifests not just through cruelty, but through moral detachment. Monica's behavior did not escalate gradually. There were no records of past violence, no reports of abuse. Her descent into homicide came not from trauma, but from a deliberate and internal shift in identity and values. At the police station, when Monica and Michael were placed in the same vehicle, they did not ask about the victims. They asked whether this would be the last time they would be together. In that moment, love and death were no longer separate in their minds. They had fused the two, making murder an act of connection. To observers, it was chilling. Monica had lived for 8 years in the Flores home. She had eaten at their table, received their affection, been included in every milestone. But in her mind, the line between family and obstacle had blurred, and the plan she created with Michael was her way of erasing it completely. By the time the blood had dried on the walls of the Flores home, Monica and Michael had done more than murder. They had dismantled the illusion that killers are always born from suffering. Sometimes they are shaped in silence, behind closed doors, within homes that appear to be full of love. Sylvia Flores survived the night that destroyed her family. Though her body bore 15 stab wounds, some dangerously close to vital arteries, she remained conscious through much of the attack. From her hospital bed, she recalled fragments of what happened in the dark. She had been asleep when the first blow came. A figure moved through the bedroom, quiet and determined. Richard awoke moments later, reacting instinctively to defend his wife. Blood sprayed across the walls as he wrestled with the assailant. His body slammed into furniture during the struggle. But the most haunting memory Sylvia carried was not of the attacker in the dark. It was of Monica. After the struggle, Sylvia lay bleeding beside her husband, barely able to speak. Monica appeared in the room, her expression unreadable. Sylvia, desperate and dazed, asked for help, motioning toward the gash in her neck. Monica stepped forward and pressed her hands to the wound, not gently, but with force. It took seconds for Sylvia to realize that Monica wasn't helping. She was pushing harder, closing off her airway. Sylvia fought back, weak but alert, managing to break the pressure. Monica's hands trembled, not with fear, but with resistance. The attempt wasn't an accident. It was a continuation of the plan. She had come to finish what had been interrupted. This moment clarified everything. Monica wasn't a bystander. She wasn't simply influenced by Michael. She was a willing participant, and more than that, she had the resolve to ensure that no one would be left alive, not even the woman who had raised her as a daughter. In the days that followed, questions turned toward motive. The family had not been abusive. Monica had never been denied affection or support. She had attended school, maintained good grades, participated in structured programs. Michael, too, while troubled and defiant toward his own family, had not been known to authorities as violent. There were no signs of prior crimes, no gradual escalation. From a criminal psychology perspective, the absence of an obvious motive is more disturbing than any narrative of abuse or revenge. It reflects a kind of emotional nullification, a detachment from the inherent value of human life. Monica's own explanation, when pressed by investigators, was that she simply wanted to know what it felt like to kill, not out of anger, not for control, but from an internal compulsion that could no longer be ignored. Her emotional disconnect, both before and after the murders, is consistent with traits observed in youth showing early signs of sociopathy. Lack of remorse, absence of empathy, fixation with control and destruction. Combined with Michael's obsessive interest in violence, the pair became a closed loop of shared delusion and purpose. The community of Pico Rivera was stunned when arrests were made. Monica, the quiet, intelligent girl raised in the Flores household, and Michael, the boyfriend who had eaten at their dinner table, were charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder. In court, Monica showed little emotion. Her demeanor remained flat, detached. Michael, on the other hand, attempted to assume full responsibility, claiming that Monica had nothing to do with the plan. But the evidence was irrefutable. Her fingerprints on the weapons, her letters detailing the attack, her presence at every critical point. The trial exposed more than the details of the murders. It exposed how two adolescents could orchestrate such violence in silence, without detection, in the middle of a functioning, loving home. Expert witnesses described the phenomenon of shared psychosis. Others spoke about early signs of personality disorders and how they can remain hidden for years beneath social compliance. The defense attempted to argue that Monica was impressionable, manipulated by an older and more dominant boyfriend, but the prosecution presented a clear picture of equal partnership. They had shared the vision, written the plan together, and acted with synchronized intent. Ultimately, the jury rejected the narrative of manipulation. Michael pled guilty before his trial began and was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole until 2027. Monica stood trial separately. In 2009, she was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole for at least 25 years. The verdict brought closure, but not comfort. For the survivors, justice came with a cruel paradox: the punishment of a child they once loved. The question that lingered was not how it happened, but why. Why would someone raised in kindness turn on their family with such brutality? Criminology does not always offer satisfying answers. Sometimes the emergence of violent behavior in youth is not caused by trauma, but by the gradual collapse of empathy, the erosion of boundaries between thought and action. In Monica and Michael's case, the seeds were planted not by pain, but by obsession, and watered by a shared fantasy that no one saw until it was too late. The Flores home has long since been cleaned and resold. But for those who remember, the memory remains vivid. A warm house turned cold, a family turned to ash, and the haunting truth that the danger wasn't outside. It had grown quietly within.